Okay. Welcome back to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. We are here talking about your inner life and the transformational work that it takes to be all that you can be and have the life you really want to be living. And I am so excited because we have Pixie Hamilton back in the house today. Welcome back, Pixie. So
Thank you,
glad you
Laurel.
are here. Laurel, aren't you glad Pixie's back with
I
us?
am. It has been a while.
It's been too long. It's been too long. So this season, we've been doing from a Beautiful Life. We've been interviewing some new folks on the show. Pixie, will you be willing to kick us off with just sharing a little bit about what your beautiful life looks like? Because we know you live a beautiful life. You've been working on crafting that for a while. And let's kick off there before we get into our topic of the day.
Yeah, I would say that I am living a beautiful life. I would think that it's not probably viewed or defined in any terms that somebody else would use, but I would say that it's beautiful because I feel like I've reached a level of what I would call awareness to kind of set me free. And um, freedom is something that I've been kind of reaching for a long time. And I feel like finally in my 60s, I'm beginning to understand the freedom. And that really has just come with a lot of work. And it's kind of ironic in the sense that a lot of it was really tough work and agonizing, gut wrenching. So people would say, well, how do you call that beautiful? Well, it's beautiful because it does, in fact, lead to a beautiful life. And the beautiful life is defined in the freedom and trust and kind of like what I would call a love realm of living. A lot still goes on in my life. Everybody has challenges and what I would call opportunities for growth. But and so in a sense, some days it doesn't feel really that beautiful. But what I realized is that every single one of those kind of low points leads to a high point. It's a kind of a
Mm.
cool, I'm an engineer, so I'm always thinking oscillation, and it's kind of a curve, it's kind of a really cool oscillating curve that's on an increasing slope. And the amplitude gets bigger and bigger as I reach into more years. So for
Yeah.
any nerds out there, that will make sense.
I
I
love that.
loved every second of that.
I knew you
And
would, Laurel.
I know, I'm like, okay, let's go. Bring out the
Bring on the
engineer in her.
engineering. That's
Um,
right.
you know, it's so interesting that you started saying, you know, y- your life may not be defined as beautiful to others, but isn't that the magic of inner work? Like we begin to really, I'll say, find strength and opportunity in that self-discovery and self-definition, right? What's beautiful to you, who cares if it's beautiful to someone else?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That is beautiful in itself, Pixie. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of leads us into what we want to talk about today and why we wanted Pixie to come in and chit chat about this topic because, so much of the defining of the beautiful life is really a self definition of what's beautiful to you, right? And because we're all unique individuals in the world, we are going to craft a life that looks different than somebody else's beautiful life. And that all comes from that idea of who you really are. And I think that, if we ask this question, who am I, which is kind of the topic of the day, how do we explore who am I? How do you keep going on that quest of self-definition? And I feel like I don't know, between the three of us, we've got a lot of self exploration and reflection and time in that space, and also an evolution, of having gone through different stages of life, which I think we define ourselves differently or come to see ourselves differently in different stages. And yet there's this kind of essence within that maybe is not really ever changing, or has defining qualities to it. And I feel like that's really where we want to hit today, is this idea of how do we explore that? How do we do that? How do we even understand what that is? And I feel like, Pixie, when we were having a conversation at one point about it, I felt like what you were saying was so potent and you'd been reflecting on it. So I kind of invite you to dive into this idea of how do we explore who am I really at the heart of, who I deeply am, or the essence of me. How do we do that?
Yeah, and I guess I'd start off by saying that I think it's pretty safe to assume that all of us as human beings have asked this question over and over and over our entire life. And, it ties with who am I? What is my purpose? Who am I? What is my purpose? And, it starts probably the most dramatic time that somebody has to like actually articulate and manifest like who am I, what is my purpose is, when they graduate from high school, right? And everyone's like, what are
Mm,
you gonna do, what are you gonna do? And then it becomes more amplified with college, now what are you gonna do? And so you go through this, what is my purpose, what's my destiny, who am I? And at that point in my 20s and 30s, I would say my who am I and what is my purpose was pretty well defined by external.
mm,
I was developing a career, I was becoming an engineer, I was a mother, I'm heavily involved in community, I was a Methodist. If somebody said, so who are you? I'd be like, oh, I'm an engineer with two kids and I live in outside of Richmond. And yeah, I volunteer a lot at my church and I really care a lot about animals and nature, and that's who I am. And,
mm,
that's great. That's perfect. And as a matter of fact, that answer, but all the answers are valid at any time and space in your life. And, I was thinking like, would that have ever held like over my life? Could I have just been a mother and been an engineer and then a retired engineer and then a grandmother and still worked at my church? And I think for a lot of people that holds and that's beautiful and that's a purpose and it's satisfying and then it's over. I didn't sustain it. I was doing and doing and doing and doing like we all do in our 20s and 30s. And in my 40s, I hit this spot where I kind of said, wait a minute, what is my purpose? Like, there's got to be more to this than this. Like, I felt empty. I felt a void. I was at a soccer game with my 9-year-old son at the time, and I'm like, God, there's got to be something more. It
mm.
hit like a two by four.
Yeah.
And I delved deep into who am I and what is my purpose in a much different dimension. And it was more at that point the answers were really driven more from I was in heavy into counseling, I was heavy into books, I was trying to read, I was like a sponge, and I was trying to approach the question of, well, who am I? Well, okay, what are my behaviors? Okay, well, I'm kind, I'm enthusiastic, I'm anxious, I'm this, I'm that. I kind of defined it at an emotional and personality and behavioral, how I interacted in relationships. And, but I think the key point, and I'm not going to dwell on that, other to say that that was great too.
Yeah.
But it's still the who am I and what am my purpose, to be kind, to be compassionate, yeah, whatever. That was also still based on external. And
Mm,
like the other answers, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a Baptist, I'm a Methodist, I'm whatever. Like those answers in my 20s and 30s, the answers in the 40s also could change. I could be very kind, I could also be very ugly. I could be very enthusiastic, I could also be very down.
mm.
I guess what my point is, it
Yeah.
was still dependent on something outside of me.
Stimulating you. Yeah.
And then finally, um, finally now in the 60s, I answer this question much differently. And it really is to the I am. And that is, what is it? And Laurel, you nailed it when you said the essence. What
Mm.
is it in me that doesn't change, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter if I'm 40 or 60, if I'm 8, if I'm 4 in Booth Bay Harbor, what is it in me that doesn't change?
Yeah.
And I have been kind of nailing that lately. And
Mm.
it's a real confidence builder. And I think if your listeners hear anything today, I would say it's worth it. Trying to figure out what the essence of that little girl was running around at 4 or 8 and what that still remains today. Because the essence of who we are, those, I don't even want to call them traits, whatever those things we came in with, drive what we do, how we act, what we say, and what we believe in. And so for me, when I got to this, when I figured out what was driving that little girl and what was driving that wife in the 20s and what was driving that rising engineer executive in her 30s and what's driving now me today, it's the same stuff.
Yeah. You know, the interesting word that came up as I was listening to you was, it was a phrase. It was having an uncontaminated responsiveness to life. Like the essence of you responds to life in a certain kind of way when it's not been contaminated by all the outside influences and expectations and conditioning that we get over the course of life, right? So it's like trying to return to this sense of self that's kind of always been there, but also has been, I don't know, coming into more full consciousness. Is that a good way to describe it, ladies? I
Well,
don't know. I feel, yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the essence of what we're talking about is that this is going to happen regardless. So you might as well get conscious about it and
Yeah.
enhance it and accentuate it and make it work for you. And almost sit and just embrace it and get confidence by it, like, oh, okay, that's me.
Yeah.
That's me. And I think it's important at this point to talk about, so what are we talking about? And I landed on 4 things that drive me. They drove me as an 8-year-old. They drove me as a senior in college. They drove me in college and they drive me now.
Mm.
And one is that I have always been a truth seeker. I have always sought. What is life? What's the truth? What's the meaning? I have absolutely reached for that as long as I can remember.
Mm.
And, was I the kid that asked why? Yeah, well, a lot of kids are. But I mean, it was deep questions, even at sleepovers as a 7th and 8th grader. I remember kind of like what I would call innovating or inspiring deep conversations with these, kids that were interested in other stuff at the time. And so when I recognized that I was going to always go for the deeper meaning of every experience and every relationship, and that's kind of what I brought in when I came to Earth, I kind of I kind of think it's exciting now. It's almost like experiences and relationships are even more vivid for me now because it's kind of like, well, Pixie, that's me. You're going to get totally in. You're going to go 100% dive in this because you're going to look for the meaning of this experience, and it's become a conscious forefront now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm thinking
Yes.
about how your recognition of it went back to like the early stages of life, and then also stayed steady through those different stages that you went through and the different self definitions that you went through. That was still a truth for you. You were still seeking truth.
Well, that
That,
was not only the truth, that was the driver. Now,
right,
whether I consciously or unconsciously knew that, it was happening.
right,
I
right.
came in with this,
Yeah,
whether I knew it or not, it
yeah.
was always there. And so another one for me, and this is a big word, and a lot of people have different definitions of it. So I got to be really careful here. But Laurel knows the story. Um, I was in English class and we were supposed to write about, I don't know, a philosopher. And of course, I delved right into existentialism. I love existentialism. I can honestly say that I've been an existentialist all my life. I came in with it. And I remember as a kid saying, well, Kenry, my brother, who is 10 months older, that's your choice. Remember, that's your choice, Kenry. You're going to have to suffer the consequences of that choice. And which is the core of existentialism, which is taking responsibility for your life, your choices, and understanding it's has a cost. It's you are the one that creates your reality and makes the choices as long as you understand that it's your responsibility to suffer whatever the outcome is. And I've been like that. I came in like that and wrote a paper on it junior year. To this day, I still have that paper and I read it.
I
And
know it's so funny that because Pixie and I we happened upon this story of our lives, somewhere back a couple of years ago, maybe more. I don't know, Pixie. Now it feels like a long time ago now. But when we talked about existentialism, it was like, oh my God, I was totally into that too. When I had written a paper on it in my junior year of high school about existentialism, but it was in French class because we were studying Sartre, and that was like my eye-opening moment of, oh my God, what is this? All this existentialism stuff about it, totally related to it. And so it's interesting again, like where can you go back if you're doing your own kind of searching for your essence as a prompt, say, from this podcast today? It's like, are there moments when you think back over the course of your life where you had that moment of aha, knowing something that you related to so vividly or deeply inside yourself? And then how has it carried through and played out along the way, right? And how has it helped you develop into who you are today and will continue to help you develop, actually, right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So interesting. Laurel, anything in here that you want to like jump in on or ask Pixie about
I
as we
have
go
so
down?
many so
I
many
know.
thoughts and
I
feelings
could tell
about
on
this
your patient
topic,
list.
right?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because when you were talking about, you know, how you defined yourself, right? Who you were at these various stages, I was really feeling, isn't it such a gift that we have language?
Mm.
And language helps us define ourselves, right? And so we go through our life, defining ourselves so that we can figure out where we fit in, where our sense of belonging is.
Mm.
And it struck me that, most of my clients come to me and they're in this place of, I know I'm meant for more. I know I'm meant for more, but I don't know what that is. Because we try to define ourselves and fit ourselves into a belongingness all the way through our life, every decade. And how lovely it is that you came into the world, Pixie, with these attributes, I'll call them, right? We give them meaning, we give them definition, but your essence remains unchanged. And in your 40s, you have that aha moment like, oh, this is who I am. I'm starting to learn this. And it goes on for the next 20 years and probably will another 20. And it's so beautiful.
At that whole idea of being struck with there's something more to
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and how many of us find ourselves in those places, right, along the way. And it isn't necessarily about more money, more fame, more
No,
friends, more
no.
whatever, right?
Yes.
It really truly is about more self understanding, more
And
self expression, right?
self-expression, freedom to be who you really are. But I often think about my own knowing I'm meant for more. It's not more tangible things. It's that my soul has a bigger purpose than what I'm living into right now. Right? And then we go into our head and we try to figure out what our purpose is, and we try to use words and language to, to define it so that we can put ourselves back in a box, right?
Right.
And then, but
Get
it's
there
really
faster.
that, right? Get there faster, right? But it's really just leaning into that. I'm I'm more than I see. I'm more than is in this physical realm. I'm more than I know. I'm more than what's in my head. And letting yourself expand into that more without even knowing or needing
Well,
to define it.
uh, uh, what a segue, because this morning I was thinking about the difference between life purpose, which I think is what we answer a lot of our life. What's my purpose in life? Versus, the soul purpose. And
Mm.
yeah, I spent a great deal of my life doing, 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 doing. And I would say that it was really 100% leaning towards my life purpose when I do and do for family and work and community and friends and you name it. And the soul purpose is our sense of being. It's not doing, it is a true sense of being.
Yeah.
And I think my goal now, my purpose now, is to meld those two so that they serve each other beautifully.
Mm.
And that's in a sense, Laurel, getting back to what we were kind of saying before,
Yeah.
this essence of who we are, it can be very unconscious. And by bringing it into the conscious realm, what we're doing is that we're melding our life purpose, how we interact with the world, how we interact with God, how we interact with ourselves, with our essence or soul purpose. And
Yeah.
I think if you do that, at least today, I was thinking that may be the secret to the most authentic and unapologetic life that a human could live. And so it's an interesting thing because then I went to, wow, I wonder if they ever conflict. Like when does the soul purpose kind of say, no, to the life purpose? And I have to say that's kind of happening to me now, not conflict, but diverge into a fork because as you guys know, I have been known to be a very strong type A, get it done kind of human, do. And now it's like my soul's purpose is softening me, slowing me down, and you don't do as much when your soul is calling that loudly into the silence. And that's exactly what's happening to me now is
Mm.
it's a loud call into the softness of silence.
Yeah.
Um, is
Yeah.
that a conflict with my life purpose? No, it's a change though, because it's moving me into a lot more solitude, a lot less doing, and a lot more just being.
Being. Mm.
Yes.
So that's the sole purpose for me right now. Am I going to give up my existentialist and truth seeking essence? No, I'm probably going to magnify them even more in that realm.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that as you in the way that you've laid it out, it's kind of your sole purpose, the more you come into an awareness of that and are able to embody it, or our essence, right, is it does shift not only what we're doing, but how we are showing up, right? How we're being. So it's shifting both the being and the doing,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
It shifts what we say. It shifts what we do. It shifts our
Yeah.
values. Yeah, it does. There's a tremendous interplay. I think the important thing to me is that I want to keep recognizing that both can kind of, play that equal leadership role in my life. So, I mean, it works. Like right now, my purpose, the one of my, who am I purpose would be, I'm traveling a lot. I have a tremendous curiosity and sense of awe about the world and about different people in the world. And I'm doing it, well, with abandon, as some of my friends say, which is the time of my life to do it. And so that's doing, right? That's a life purpose. I'm answering a life calling of, you know, uh, kind of merging myself with all the different varieties of life. Um, but I'm doing it with knowing what my essence drive is, and that is to seek the truth in every single experience. When to have resilience in the challenges that traveling can, offer. One of my kind of essence attributes is I I'm an alchemist. I'm constantly turning lemons into lemonade, or
Mhm.
anything into gold. And so, when I'm trying to keep going on my example of traveling with curiosity, and that is that, you hit a lot of challenges when you travel, especially when you do it to far off kind of remote places. And to hold on to the essence of an alchemist and always seeing the good in every situation. Um, it's emerging. Does that make sense? And that example of what I'm doing now is my life purpose and following my soul purpose.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and
Go
go ahead,
ahead,
Laurel.
Laurel, and then I want
Oh,
to follow up. Go. Yeah.
I see it as and both, right? Like you can be living your life purpose and living your soul purpose at the same time, right? And while you're doing the traveling, you're being curious. And so the traveling is just the way in which you're bringing about who you are,
Exactly.
who you've
Yeah.
always been.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to share a little bit here because I feel like this is a great example of, uh, how the doing is really ultimately can be a representation of experiencing what you want and what you bring to it and how you define it. So we'll use this one specific example because I'm in a stage of life and I'm traveling a lot too. But my traveling is not because I'm a curious adventurer and wanderer in the world who wants to see all the sights. That is not why my traveling is coming forth. My traveling is coming forth because I live with someone who wants to travel and I want to be a good partner and I want to learn how to, let's say, release control over every moment of my life and enjoy the abundance that has been offered to me and that I've been given in this lifetime. That is not an easy thing for me to do. It is a shift from a lot of what I had growing up. And so for me to like open fully to that and enjoy it and embody it and allow it even is a work in progress for me. So my what's behind my traveling and what's behind Pixie's traveling are two very different things. And yet what we're doing is a conscious living into a more fullness of the essence of who we are. And we're doing that more purposely through the experience, which happens to be traveling, right?
Yes.
But they're very different. I mean, very different. What's behind
No,
that?
that is such a phenomenal insight, Laurel, and it'll be one that I actually think about after this, because what you just witnessed and played testimony to is the uniqueness of each person and why we should never judge or make assumptions about anything because the essence driving what seemingly is the same thing is totally different. I love that example.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I do.
it brings me right back to where we started, in that how you, Pixie, define your beautiful life may not be how someone else defines their beautiful life, or even witnessing your life, they may decide it's not beautiful, right? Like that whole piece of, it's for our own essence, our own being, our own soul's growth, our own lived experience.
Yeah,
I think
it's for who we are, and even
yes,
the seemingly identical situation of two people, Laurel and I are exact same age,
Yeah.
in this same exact stage of life, at the same kind of, place, and we're doing the same thing, and yet the essence of who we are is totally different. And
Yeah.
it's that is what's beautiful.
yes.
I mean, that is crazy. So Laurel, I guess what comes up for me too is, I mentioned some of like what we would call the essence attributes or whatever we want to define,
Yeah,
we need
name
language
them.
here, Laurel.
That's
But
right. We do need language.
what would be your key top thing that comes to the top to that? I guess what it's important is to give listeners some examples of what else we're talking about,
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in and then Laurel, I want to hear from you. So, if we just continue with this idea of me and traveling and a partnership, right, is I know even growing up, right, I had this deep desire to live in a harmonious environment. And I didn't live in one growing up necessarily. So it was always kind of this desire to how do we create a harmonious experience? What do we contribute? How do we interact with people in order to experience that, right? And so for me, traveling has so many components of exploring how to have a harmonious trip, with a partner who might have agenda that's different than mine in that day, and or even just being fatigued and not wanting to overdo it. Like how do we maintain a sense of harmonious, how do I do that, right, in my own experience? So for me, I know, I desire harmony and beauty. I've desired it my entire life. And how's it playing out in the specific experiences that I'm in right now, right? So my self-definition is, I don't know, who seeks harmony and beauty? Is that an artist, whatever that archetype is,
Yeah.
But I think it's like, how do you use the words there's archetypes, there's values, there's qualities, to be able to self-define and self-understand and begin to live into a real sense of who you are in your essence. Yeah. Yeah. Laurel, what comes up for you around that? Yeah.
It all of this conversation reminds me of, the exercise I do often with clients, and I've challenged many groups that I've spoken in front of, is defining yourself without any relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, at my essence, who I am, since I've came into this body, curious is my essence. I'll say kind and curious. No matter what stage in life I've been, this is an area where I'll say life has always presented me opportunity and challenges around those two things. When I think I can learn and grow through them, I can be criticized for them or praised for them, all in the same day, right? But they're always there. They're always in me. And it reminds me of when I think about, how we start to tap into our essence, and really we have to like peel back the onion, and get to the layer after layer after layer, right to that very core, and do it in a way where we can start to see that piece that's always been with us without criticism. That's the hard part.
Yeah, without judgment.
Right?
Right.
Without
Well,
judgment.
and I
Yeah.
think getting to this, at one point I said, when I realized this stuff about me that's the essence, it gave me confidence. Because even so, Laurel, playing off you, curiosity is huge for me, right?
Yeah.
And it's part of my truth seeking, right? So like if I guess if you had an experience and you're kind of down one day, and you're just feeling low and you don't really know where to go. You just like, God, life sucks kind of thing, And if you remember consciously, if you remember just to say to Laurel, wait a minute, let me be curious about this because that's who I am. And you tap into that known essence during that low point in that day. And you just say, wait a minute, wait a minute. I know my essence, curiosity. And you just sit back and you pause and you say, I wonder
Mm-hmm.
during that dark time. And to me,
Yeah.
it can get you through or out or whatever of that kind of low point quicker because
Definitely.
you've taken your essence and you've brought it to light, you've gotten conscious, and you feel that spark of essence and life in you during that low point. Does that make sense?
It does. And the question I ask constantly is what am I supposed to learn through this? Right? I mean,
Right.
it could be a day that I'm, experiencing the awe and abundance, and I am, on fire. And I still ask myself, what am I to learn through this? Or it could be like in the deep depths of, the darkness of the world. I can be in that place too.
Yeah.
And I do think it really takes, I mean, we talk about conscious, right? Getting out of your head into your heart and really questioning, who am I at that core? And getting away from, Laurel, you mentioned the conditioning, right? Like, I remember early, I started going to summer camp for 2 weeks, overnight camp, when I was probably 7 years old. I could not wait to get to camp because I got to be just me. No one's daughter, no one's sister, no one's neighbor. I was just Laurel. And I can't answer for why my parents sent me, but for me, camp was being able to be myself for 2 weeks out of 52 weeks a year. I wasn't known. And that's really, I think, a place where I started to discover who I was. Just me.
Yeah, I love that.
And when you think, like, even as adults, how often, it's one of the reasons I loved going to Kripalu, a yoga retreat in Western Mass. I would go alone and I could be just me for 2 days, right? Can we find places where we're allowed to be no one to anyone else but ourselves? Because that we can really deepen into what is our essence? What's our soul purpose? Are we living our soul purpose while we're living our lived experience?
Yeah, I love that. I would say to everybody listening to our conversation today, if you walk away with nothing else that inspires you or sets you on the pathway to discovering more of your essence, I would say this idea of beginning to just identify, these kind of more constant qualities or uh,
Ways of being.
values, ways that you show up in the begin to identify them. And then, as Pixie said, like if you have a day where you're feeling, what am I doing? What's the purpose of life? Why bother anymore? It's like, go to that list, right? Go to that place that you think these are my essential qualities. This is somewhere, this is about the essential me, right? And you bring that in and you say, how can I look through this lens today? What can I do through this lens today? Or how can I bring up this quality and live into this today, right? My sense is that if it has to do with our essence, our soul, you're going to feel more alive. You're going to feel more confident. That I feel like that word was we slipped by it real fast. We didn't like really hang on to what this getting in touch with your soul's or essential self is. And it does give you a real sense of confidence and purpose and alignment
And
and
belonging.
belonging, truthful to self, right? It can shift, transform how you're experiencing life, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a big one. It's so good.
Well, yeah. And I do think that, as when we're talking about doing the beautiful work, it's like, how do we do the beautiful work? Well, this is a great example. Like if you're feeling lost in the world today, what matters to you? And how can you get in touch with that and then be aligned with that more, right? Which I think is what you were saying, Pixie. It's like
Well, yeah,
kind
and
of a turnaround is
also
get aligned with who you really are.
just get aligned with who you are, and not be afraid of it. And I'm sitting here thinking like actually a couple thoughts, but one is, so let's say you look back on your life and you say, you know, I've always been a rebel. Like I've always been a rebel. And our culture can it can criticize that. It can actually squash that and say, you got to fit, you got to get in line. Like stop doing that. But if you're a rebel, like if you look back on your life and you think, no, I'm always the one to have the new idea, and I'm always the one to speak up if it doesn't feel right and all that. Embrace it. Embrace the rebel within. Don't let anybody squash it. And I think there are some attributes we come in with that we're afraid to let shine. Now, there's shadow parts of being a rebel. I get it. I mean, there's a reason culture sometimes squashes rebels. But I guess my point is be who you are, and sometimes it's going to take some courage.
And I have a suggestion for this because you say rebel and I say change maker, right? So when, the shadow side,
Yeah.
right? Those definitions, those titles are given to us again through language.
Yeah.
So whenever I come up against this word that's like, oh, that word is not acceptable, I start running it through the list of synonyms. And I find a synonym that is acceptable. Because a change maker, God, the world needs change makers, right? But rebels we don't like, right? Or
Exactly.
being curious, I can say I've been punished for being too curious. I ask too many questions. I've been told that by teachers, by nuns, by doctors, by bosses, managers. I ask too many questions. And I'm like, okay, I'm curious, right? And so it really is important for us to own it, to live into it, and find a way, again, through language, that we can make peace with who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're here for that reason, right? You know it. You will both know it. We are here in this lifetime for a reason. And that reason often is within our essence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so much of what we're here for has to do with self-discovery, right? Which is why this beautiful work, beautiful life is so potent for us, right? Is if you're willing to do the beautiful work, in your lifetime, you begin to get in touch with a sense of essence, a sense of your soul, and then you begin to craft your life around that truth, that inner experience. And what happens is it comes out looking like your own beautiful life. Even if it's not beautiful to somebody else, we don't care about that, right? It's not about that. It's about, this is my beautiful life and this is how I want to live it. And ultimately, if you're in alignment with it and it is your beautiful life and it truly is in a soul alignment, usually it's making the world a more beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yeah, I
the
mean,
thing,
this is probably a personal value that I certainly don't want to impose on people, but I would say that if it's in the essence, it's good, it's
Yeah.
divine,
Yeah.
it's probably sacred,
Yeah.
and to go with it
Yeah.
is probably for the good and a beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's one thing that I would want to maybe recommend that if anybody's intrigued with this, because it's hard to figure out who am I. It's overwhelming. And there one place to kind of get some ideas of maybe essence attributes is Caroline Myss. She
Yeah.
has
Yeah. We love
some
her.
great some great books and podcasts and YouTube videos on,
Yeah.
I guess she calls them archetypes, which I think can be a little bit of a challenging and overwhelming word, so you don't get caught up in that. But it's fun to kind of read through. I think she offers like 20 or so. I don't know, Laurel. Do you remember how many archetypes Caroline
Oh,
Myss talks
yeah, I
about?
know. I mean, the book and it's so many. It's so
But
many.
like,
Yeah. But you
it's
have your
it's
kind of 20 major maybe
yeah, like
types. Yeah.
artist
Yeah.
and healer and mystic and mediator and
Martyr.
Athlete. Yeah, so many, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just to maybe even read through those and see,
Yeah. What resonates, right?
what kind of comes up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I remember like artists, it's not like, oh, painter or sculpture or, whatever. I remember reading her thing about artist and it was like just embodying a passion for something beyond that which is right in front of you, creating kind of like a passionate, emotional field, inspirational, inspiring others with your artwork. So it's not like limited to maybe this language thing again, Laurel, but that, limited to a painting, the artist's expression of life and the energy that comes with that. I mean, it could be a musician, it could be,
Yeah.
an author, it could be any way to create through an artistic expression. And I thought of artists when you were talking, Laurel,
Mm.
because, they, from an outsider viewing you, artist comes up for me for you. You're constantly kind of expressing yourself in, a beautiful, soft dimension. So anyway, it's fun, and maybe to go to that if somebody just needs a little bit of extra input.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put Caroline's name in the show notes and some either a link to a video or a book or whatever, so you can start doing a little exploration there. But I think that for all of us, the invitation is it's an invitation really that you've got to give to yourself. That idea of who am I, and when it comes up, and I think that in our dark moments, it's like, oh, why am I here? Versus why am I here? And the dark moment of why am I here is often can be the beginning of the journey to this self-discovery of your essence, which can turn your whole life around into making it more beautiful and more of what you want. So don't lose heart out there if you're feeling like, why am I here? Why bother? And in today's world, with all the craziness that's going on, it's easy to feel that way. And yet, we need you here for some reason. You have gifts to bring to the world. So, we want to know who you are. Get to the business of getting it done. Hopefully, you found some great suggestions. Thanks, Pixie, for being here with us. Thank you so much for all the ideas and challenges we've kind of thrown out here together. Laurel, again, great conversation. We love it when Pixie's here, don't we?
Yes, we do.
We really do.
And I'm going to say that celebrating this freedom that you have found in your self-discovery is really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want freedom, if you want to feel freedom, here you go. Here's a beautiful pathway right there. Let's go. Let's go, everybody. Let's go.
That's right.
All right. We'll be back for more beautiful work, beautiful life. Be well out there, everybody. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.